like.
But you think that
Yeah, the point
disruption
is to get those folks' panties in a wad. The point is to ruin those folks' day. It is. Because business as usual should not be happening.
That's
you
true.
know, how many every
true.
single day for the last like month after month after month after month after month, I've seen dead kid after dead kid after dead kid on my fucking phone, bro.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Theory Underground. What you're about to listen to is something that we recorded yesterday. Now, I think it'll be premiering tomorrow from the time that I'm recording this, but we want to get it up quickly because we did something special on the Weather Underground a few days ago when we were in Phoenix at Nancy Skate Park doing an Agora event. We read the Weather Underground manifesto with Benjamin Studebaker on Why Left, and we critiqued it. Well, we did that in preparation for meeting Bill Ayers, because I've got a panel with him at the Platypus Convention this weekend. Well, basically, we're at the airport right now. We're walking through, as you can probably hear in the background, but the reason we wanted to get it up is because it's sort of time sensitive. Like, this is right now. This is the very end of the TU spring segment of the 2025 tour for opening the Agora. And yeah, there was a lot of serendipity that went into this, wasn't there, Will?
Yeah, 100%. A lot.
Yeah, because we were going to just go downtown somewhere, Boise, and read from Elton L. K. of the Working Class Intelligentsia's piece that he wrote on class and Marxism. But instead, we decided to read from, because we couldn't get the printer to work, we took Todd Gitlin's The 60s, Years of Hope, Days of Rage, and it focused on the section about the Weather Underground because it's timely and it makes sense. But when we got there, there were a couple of the Free Palestine protesters waving flags, and one of them likes to disrupt things and came over and sort of maybe unintentionally filibusters what we're doing, and we have a bit of a back and forth and we reflect on it a bit. It's interesting. I'll just leave it. It's interesting. Would you say?
Yeah, very, very interesting. So she kind of like circles us for a little bit, listening, and then eventually she comes over and launches into, a filibuster.
And then at some point, Nance gets up and walks away. You won't be able to see how far away he walked, but he goes far away. And then he's gone for a while, and then he comes back because he was just so over it or didn't know what to do or whatever. And we were just like, well, I mean, I couldn't have walked away. I was kind of just mind-boggled that here we are reading about this revolutionary burnout loop that we're stuck in with the New Left, and then up walks somebody who's like parroting all their talking points and their base assumptions, and it was like kind of synergistic and generative in a very serendipitous way.
Yeah, you kind of summoned her. You summoned her up and she arrived. That's what happens when you read that book.
Yeah, so don't take The 60s by Todd Gitlin to your state capitol and start reading it off the steps. You might just have happen to you what we experienced here. With that, enjoy. All right. The implosion. As one young SDS activist put it recently, after a certain amount of frustration, you decide that at least you can make yourself into a brick and hurl yourself. Stratton Lynn, summer 1969. The anti-war stalemate. The strategy for the revolution was difficult to work up, but easy to talk about. For the revolution was as abstract as it was nebulous. You could cite authorities, Lenin said X, brandish shreds of personal testimony, I heard a block say Y, a worker say Z, lead cheers for the latest action, numbers are growing, struggle is sharpening, but questions of practical strategy, in particular how to end the war, required a firmer grounding in reality. Before the perpetual question, what is to be done, comes, what are we doing? And on this score, in the summer and fall of 1969, the anti-war movement was in the dark. Richard Nixon, master strategist, had fastened on a three-pronged project of which the anti-war movement was only dimly aware. First, he had resolved to extricate the war, political dynamite, as Lyndon Johnson had discovered, from American politics. In May 1969, Nixon announced the withdrawal of 25,000 troops, and by the end of the year, he had brought home a total of 65,000. On November 3rd, he gave a name to his policy, Vietnamization, turning the burden of ground combat over to the Saigon Army. In 1970, another 140,000 Americans came home. With draft calls peaking and the number of eligible males swelling, Nixon moved toward a draft lottery and indicated that he was going to phase out the draft altogether. In fits and starts, he talked peace with Hanoi and the NLF in Paris. He convinced TV network news that the story was, "We are on our way out of Vietnam," fully 4 years before the last American combat troops left Vietnam. Meanwhile, Nixon accelerated the concealed war, the one that pulverized Indochina but cost few American casualties. In March 1969, aiming to impress Hanoi with the impossibility that he would stop at nothing, he began bombing Cambodia in secret. Over the next 14 months, he authorized 3,600 flights, which dropped 110,000 bombs, tons of bombs on neutral Cambodia. Yeah, tons is a lot more than, yeah. He bombarded North Vietnam and threatened still more furious attacks upon Hanoi and its infiltration routes south. His goal, like his predecessors, was at the least to keep from losing the war while he was in office, or at most, as Seymour Hersh has argued, to bomb his way to victory. Nearly 10,000 Americans died in Vietnam during 1969. More than 20,000 Americans and several 100,000 Vietnamese died while the war was winding down. All told, between 1965 and 1973, Nixon and Johnson dropped more than 8 million tons of bombs on Indochina, more than 4 times what the U.S. dropped during all of World War II. Third, to keep his hands free, Nixon tried to crush as much as possible of the anti-war movement, along with black militants. The FBI had finally come to the conclusion that the New Left was a force to be reckoned with, not just an infiltration zone for the Communist Party. New leftists were gradually added to J. Edgar Hoover's Security Index, a master file of candidates for roundup during a national emergency. Our whereabouts, therefore, had to be updated every few months. We were often tracked down through pretext calls by FBI agents. Because of Gitlin's background as a writer, my favorite memo reads, "It is not believed to be in the Bureau's best interest to interview him at this time." The CIA's Operation Chaos, formerly the Special Operations Group for Movement Surveillance, grew. The Nixon administration used militants, including agent provocateurs, to taint moderates, on the principle that the more destructive the protest, the easier it was to discredit. It authorized wiretaps, grand jury investigations, felony prosecutions. It contrived to plant nasty stories and otherwise worsen the already bad press which the New Left was receiving. It tried to intimidate news media deemed too sympathetic to the protests and harassed the underground press. The FBI and other agencies opened mail, pressured employers, landlords, and printers, forged letters to provoke or deepen intra-movement quarrels, and schemed to spread suspicion that some leaders were government informers, a practice apparently so common there was a special term for it, bad jackets. State and local police contributed their own burglaries, stole mailing lists, investigated harassment by landlords, and disconnection by phone companies. Eventually, even mild liberals were placed on a White House enemies list. With Nixon trying to spin an aura of statesmanship, the bad cop rhetoric was assigned to Vice President Spiro T. Agnew, who contributed blasts against small cadres of professional protesters, narrating nabobs of negativism and the effete corps of impudent snobs who characterized themselves as intellectuals. Indeed, Agnew proclaimed his own version of the sleeping dog strategy. If, in challenging, we polarize the American people, he said on October 30th, 1969, I say it is time for positive polarization, a constructive realignment. It is time to rip away the rhetoric and to divide on authentic lines. It is time to discard the fiction that in a country of 2 million people, everyone is qualified, 200 million people, everyone is qualified to quarterback the government. Yeah, actually, how about you just take it from there to the end of the section we'll have?
Yeah. So at the end of this section, we can stop and discuss a bit if we feel the need to do so. The anti-war movement was like an audience gathered for a performance taking place behind drawn curtains. There were offstage screams. Once in a while, a functionary would appear in front of the curtain and announce that the difficulties were being tended to. It was obvious that since Tet, the war had divided the political, economic, media, and even military elites, and equally obvious that these divisions were not forcing the U.S. out of Vietnam. The question was whether to widen or intensify the protest. Moderates wanted to augment the numbers and galvanize supporters in Congress and the media. They marched, lobbied, wrote letters, campaigned for immediate withdrawal. What had been the radical position in the mid-60s. On October 15, 1969, came their supreme moment, the moratorium, a day on which millions decided not to do business as usual, but took part in a cascade of local demonstrations, vigils, church services, petition drives, replete with respectable speechmakers and sympathetic media fanfare. On November 15th came a huge mobilization in Washington, up to 750,000 demonstrators, coinciding with a second national moratorium. Then, hiatus. The moderates stalled. The leadership didn't know what to do for an encore. The anti-warriors had become accustomed to defeat. That the worst escalations might be averted or postponed was abstract surmise. The solid fact was that bombs were falling. No one outside the White House suspected that the October 15th moratorium and the promise of more of the same on November 15th helped abort Nixon's secret summer ultimatum to Hanoi, either accommodate to his bargaining terms by November 1st, or he would launch an unprecedented new assault, including, as Seymour Hersh has written, the massive bombing of Hanoi, Haiphong, and other key areas in North Vietnam, the mining of harbors and rivers, the bombing of the dike system, a ground invasion of North Vietnam, the destruction, possibly with nuclear devices, of the main north-south passes along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and the bombing of North Vietnam's main railroad links with China. There were military arguments against the feasibility of this barrage, but Nixon was also deterred by the protest. While letting it be known that he would spend November 15th in front of the White House TV watching the Washington Redskins game, the president was convinced that, as he later put it, after all the protests and the moratorium, American public opinion would be seriously divided by any military escalation of the war. But more and more of the movement was succumbing to bitter-end rage. By 1970, even the anti-war movement's longtime campaigners, adult, relatively patient, immune to America's cornucopian promises, felt burnt out by frustration and factionalism. The younger, more radical activists were more utopian and apocalyptic to start with, and experience seemed not to reward their small supplies of patience. All the more reason for them to intensify the struggle, as Eldridge Cleaver put it, and not just in the name of ending the war, but increasingly for victory to the NLF, and against a system of which the Vietnam War came to seem a necessary consequence. Every day the blood spilled, the radical analysis gained credibility. For if the war went on despite massive and widening protest, despite economic drain and political unpopularity, if liberals and rational imperialists like Johnson's wise men could not liquidate it as a bad investment, it had to be more than a mistake, had to be not only a crime, but a symptom. From the principle that effects are commensurate with causes, it seemed to follow that some enormous machinery was at work. Call it imperialism. Once resistance sprang up, imperialism led to mass slaughter. For if the guerrillas swam among the people like fish in water, as Mao said, the imperialists would try to win by drying up the lake. Perhaps then the Vietnam War was the linchpin of the entire imperial order. Perhaps the domino theory was valid after all, although not as the policymakers meant it. If they lost in Vietnam, they would inspire revolutionary movements throughout the Third World. If the White House thought Vietnam was the sine qua non of American power, it was. If everything was at stake in Vietnam, it was easy to conclude that whoever opposed imperialism was on the side of the angels, and that the angels, arrayed in a single choir, were about to usher in the millennium. Emotions scoured the mind to black and white. The logic came down to this. The world was neatly divided into revolutionaries and counter-revolutionaries. The task was no longer ending the war, but winning it, which, thanks to the North Vietnamese and the NLF, was within reach. From early SDS on, hadn't the New Left point been victory, not moral witness? Counselors of patience and coalition, those who doubted that a revolution was on the American agenda, were accused of having made their peace with a savage society. The militants, whether from early or late SDS, thought they were pragmatists, learning from experience that when you beat your head against a wall often enough, there is something to be said for turning to dynamite. This late New Left no longer called itself a New Left. It even spat at such sentimental mush. As early as the summer of 1968, SDS National Secretary Mike Klonsky was using New Left as a pejorative. When I got involved in SDS, Klonsky said years later, I haven't read the Port Huron statement. I got involved because Calvert and Davidson came out to LA, and they said, put your body on the line. And from protest to resistance, and so on. And the next thing I knew, I was the field secretary. What had been the movement was increasingly the left, period. The current incarnation of a historical perennial, or a prologue to that apocalypse to end all apocalypses, the revolution.
I kind of want to just keep it going.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
just say for
Yeah.
now.
Are you sure you guys just don't want to read?
The only thing we want your voice in this.
Are you sure?
Yeah, of course.
Because I might need to.
You're such a good reader.
Well, are you
You're such a
reading?
good reader.
It's,
This is
What's it called?
Todd Gitlin's
Todd Gitlin.
Todd
The 60s.
Gitlin.
Years of Hope, Days
Days of Rage.
So he was one of the core organizers for Students for Democratic Society, SDS, back in the 60s. And it's just, timely.
Is that like modern day DSA?
Yeah, it was all.
Yeah.
A lot of these
Yeah.
people became DSA or Weathermen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're trying to read the section about the Weathermen because we just did an event about it. And so,
I love what you're reading.
yeah.
I love what you're reading.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much.
It seems
Yeah.
it seems
We
like
love-
it seems poetic that you're
Yeah,
here while
it
we're
is.
doing this.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were coming up here to read this either
I like
way,
it.
and you
I
guys
like
are here.
it. I just like, there's things I understand you're filming,
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
but I'm like,
Yeah.
but you're filming.
Yeah. Well, this is gonna go up on our YouTube channel or
What is it again?
on Theory Underground, which is a YouTube channel,
Oh, there it is.
and we just do public readings
Yep.
and stuff like that. So
Trying to read
Trying-
in public, show people that you can read. You
books
don't have to.
be in isolation. They can
Yeah.
be between friends, and I don't know. We try to pick good stuff, and this is good.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's something I keep going back to
It
since
sounds like
2020.
y'all are like aligned. Like it sounds like y'all are aligned with liberation. Like you care
Yeah, I
that
think we
there's
care.
genocides happening.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
At the very least, it sounds like y'all care.
Yeah.
And it's just for a little sci-fi
And I know
piece.
y'all are reading like some like older like white man like philosopher blah blah blah, which like I do think is still valuable. Like I do think like that is valuable, and I feel like what I've gathered from what you've read, like it feels like it is like I don't know if y'all are like able to speak on like the current genocides and whatnot, but it sounds like like pertinent,
We don't like them.
like what
That's the short
like
version.
what you're saying, like it sounds like pertinent, and like that's why we're all out here, and we've all caught charge after charge after charge, trespass after trespass.
Have
like,
you really?
yeah, like we're going toe to toe with these motherfuckers with their weird fucking hats who are coming out right now. Probably because we're here. If you turn around.
No, we will leave them be.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll leave us be, because
They will, because y'all are three white men and you're recording your little podcast. I don't give a shit about you.
We'll see.
But they've harassed like peaceful protesters for like the past year just for being out here with flags, you know? For saying the same shit y'all are saying to your camera.
No, I
Saying
wouldn't
the
say we're
same
saying...
shit.
We're not saying the same stuff.
No, we are though.
No, because the
I'm
problems
saying-
of the problems of the new left are the problems of the current left.
What do
and
you
what
mean?
this, well, you'd have to listen to the whole thing, but basically this is
I
about
hear what
the
y'all are
problems
reading.
of the
I hear what y'all
new
are reading,
left.
and I'm with you. Like, alright, like we've been saying the same shit, and we just been getting slapped with, you know, like state repression,
Yeah.
like aggressively so, you know, and like it just is like important to pay attention to like community. I don't know if y'all actually live in Boise or what.
I do.
Do y'all live in Boise?
No.
No.
He's from London.
I'm from London.
Oh,
But we're traveling and we're trying. I mean, yeah, we
We're
are
on
doing.
tour right now, yeah.
We are
Yeah.
doing theory and philosophy. We're not doing direct action. We're asking questions about what is possible to be
Yeah.
done, like what can be done,
yeah.
and kind of problematizing. I don't know, the idea of action, praxis. What is it? I don't know. The world is definitely horrible right now. The world is definitely runs on genocide right now, like
And slavery.
and slavery.
Yeah, so we agree with you on that.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you know what's happened, like, to folks in Boise, like on the ground folks like in Boise for the last year? Have y'all been? I'm not
I
saying
try
it
not to.
as like a. Do you know what's happened? I'm just like,
I've
you're from
personally-
here, so I'm sure you've heard about it. But a lot of community members have been like targeted by the state.
Yeah.
Just for simply being out on the street and holding
Yeah.
these flags. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they'll definitely harass you.
But
I
do
mean-
you know like what's gone down? There's
Do you-
been like
do you know-
there's been over 22 arrests. There's
Yeah.
been over 22 like sorry, not arrests. There's been over 22 court cases. And like the state has trespassed over like 3 to 4 different people. They have been harassing unhoused people, like just that have participated in our protests that are like against genocide. Yep. Unhoused people have been getting targeted, like abducted off the street.
Mm-hmm. It sucks.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
What's your name?
My name's Hannah.
Nice to meet you. I'm Dave. Yeah, I've not really been involved with much in terms of local organizing here since the Bernie movement burnt out, really. That's been my
When did Bernie burn out?
2020.
He burned out in 2020.
The movement.
The movement.
Yeah.
No, I mean in like. Okay.
Yeah, the movement. Yeah. Which I was involved with between 2015 and 2020. So, but since then, the focus is more like, what are the chronic crises of activism, academia, and the attention economy? Really, the 3 avenues people take for social change. Because there's definitely chronic crises.
You should talk to the folks who are here every Friday.
I don't like the activist community in Boise.
Why not?
That's a whole conversation we could have, but we've got a production we're doing. And we came all the way here to do it, so we're going to continue doing it, Hannah. But I do appreciate it. And I will hang out and
He's
talk
filming.
afterwards.
It seems like it's part of your
Well, for-
production.
But the goal of the production
Do you want him?
is this.
Do you want him to not film the convo?
He is a free agent. He does what he wants, you know. He's all the way here just spying on Americans, making his little documentary. This is just what he does.
You can keep filming if you want to.
Yeah, I might do.
It's okay.
But yeah, you need to read. It's your turn,
Yeah.
Will.
Should I read?
Yeah.
You sure?
You can take it for a turn if you want to. But yeah, we all just take turns.
Do you want to read?
We've got a chapter.
So y'all read from this.
Lots of books. Lots of books.
Gitlin and lots of books.
Lots of
like
books.
white leftist authors.
Not just white leftists. Not just leftists.
Yeah. But I definitely don't like associating with people who primarily see people in terms of race or gender.
Yeah, that's why
Which
it's
is the
hard.
Boise community,
That's why it's hard to be in Boise. You know, like a lot of people in Boise, it's heavily concentrated with like white Christian nationalists. Like
Yeah.
people have a lot of fragility here. Like it's an absurd amount of fragility in Boise, and then a lot of like.
Do you think you make it better?
Do I think I make it better? Boise does not like me.
Does that make it better? The fragility?
The white fragility? I don't think white fragility makes anything better.
No, but do you think you make the American situation with white fragility better?
I think I ruin a lot of people in Boise's day.
And that makes it better? Do you get it when I'm driving?
I think that like the point of protest, many times is disruption. Like the point is to disrupt. The point is to disrupt business as usual.
Yeah.
So, you know, when we're walking down 8th, when we're walking down Capitol, when we're out here, blah, 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 and people get their panties in a wad because we're just simply saying, like, hey, please stop sending our tax dollars to bomb kids, you know, in Gaza. Like, and people are like, like,
But you think that
yeah, the
disruption
point is
good?
to get those folks' panties in a wad. The point is to ruin those folks' day. It is. Because business as usual should not be happening.
That's
you know,
true. You don't
how
think-
many every
true.
single day for the last like month after month after month after month after month, I've seen dead kid after dead kid after dead kid on my fucking phone, bro.
Yeah.
I seen a 2-year-old with his head caved in yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, so don't like whine to me about like you're ruining our dinner. Like, I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
that's the fucking point. If your 2-year-old had their head caved in from a fucking bomb, don't you think you would want someone's dinner ruined
Yeah.
over it? Like, so stop. So like stop with these bad faith questions. I'm tired of these
My
bad faith
questions?
questions, not you.
Oh, okay. The
I'm tired
hypothetical-
of bad faith questions and people being like, you're really like, this is not the way to go about it. Like, there's better ways to go about it. There's better ways to blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I think there's better ways to go about fucking, like, I think that bombing kids, I think that dismembering kids is probably the last fucking, like, sorry, words are hard when you're talking about dismembered children. You know what I mean?
They
Words
can't-
are
yeah,
hard.
They don't really do it
Words
justice.
are hard. And
Yeah.
responding to that information is hard. That's why we go out on the street. That's why we ruin people's fucking dinner, because this is not normal. This is not normal. That's why I'm out here with these flags. People are getting abducted off the motherfucking streets. People are watching their kids get dismembered. Because why? Because why? Because why? Because why? Do you have an answer? Does anyone have an answer? No one has a fucking answer.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not out here pretending like I'm the most articulate activist or whatever, but like this, I think everyone can agree that like watching kids get dismembered on our motherfucking phone screens is not normal, is not okay, is not something we should remain calm about.
Yep.
Do you want to remain calm about that? I don't. I got fired from my motherfucking daycare job because I was out here being like, hey, we're slaughtering kids. Hey, our tax dollars are literally fucking slaughtering kids. I think that's wrong, and they fired me for it. Is that normal?
Are you saying
is that okay? Like, is that normal? No, I don't think so.
No.
Can anyone explain, like, why the fuck our country and Western countries are responding this way? I don't think so.
People do.
I don't want to hear a devil's
try.
advocate, so if that's what you're about to do.
No, I get it. You're just getting this off your chest. So,
Do you want to get anything off your chest?
not right now.
Do you have a devil's advocate argument?
No.
Okay, great.
No. There's places you can go for
There's
such
no
things.
devil's advocacy when we're talking about kids being slaughtered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no devil's advocacy. Like,
I think Finkelstein had like a 4-hour
who's
conversation with
Finkelstein?
Norman Finkelstein? You don't know him? I'd say he's the most important Jewish, or at least, I don't know about important, but he's the most influential Jewish voice that is anti-Israel. So like, and he's been doing it longer than we've been alive.
Right.
You know, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you would love him, actually.
Right.
You would love him.
I'm sure I would.
Definitely check him out.
Yeah.
Finkelstein.
What'd he say?
Oh, well, you know.
Or what
Pretty
were
much
you-
everything you've heard people say about Palestine probably comes out of his book called Gaza, right? And I think he published that book in the 80s. And then I think like 7 years ago, he finally just kind of gave up advocating for it, kind of changed his focus to other things. And then he felt really bad about that because he just doesn't know what to do, but then he kind of came out again.
What do you have to
recently.
say about Gaza?
I think that it's kind of like Vietnam. That's why we're reading this right now, because it's the same deadlock we've been in with what gets interpreted as imperialism or capitalism or whatever. But it's the political deadlock.
Deadlock as in, like...
Meaning that, like, there's a loop that we're stuck in where we see things on TV, we see things on our phone, and then there's only certain avenues that we can think of towards social change, but they are already part of the thing. I would go so far as saying that disrupting someone's day, like stopping the freeway, for instance, would be a pretty awesome way to disrupt people's day. But that it's already coded into the whole situation, that we don't have a strategy right now that hasn't become a part of the process.
Have you been part of any, like, action that's felt like actually productive or, like, disruptive, or you've not seen anything so far?
I've been
As a journalist, you've not seen anything so far that has actually shaken, you know, like...
I would say that the
social...
I'll put it as the pro-Palestine movement has done a great job signal boosting it. But as far as have I been involved with anything that gives me inspiration or hope? Not yet. Not yet.
What do you think would
Did
actually...
we lose Nance?
Yeah, I don't know where
Yeah,
Nance
you
is
lost
gone.
Nance. What do you think would actually, like, shake anybody that's important? You know, anybody who... What do you envision? Like, in terms of, like, an action that could actually materially change shit? Like, what do you envision?
If we could collapse space and time...
Okay.
So that
no,
I'm not joking. I'm not joking. If we could collapse the gap between when you buy things and when they're produced, so that people were not separated from the chain of production or the chain of distribution or the actual origin of production, so that every time you plug your phone in, you had to actually sit with the people whose entire lives are spent mining cobalt. If that happened, I think that would change how people
In Congo, you're
deal
talking about
with
the
it.
people in Congo?
Yeah, exactly.
Talk more about Congo.
I do.
No, to me.
On my channel or in my classroom.
Talk to me right now about Congo.
The main thing that I think that the Congo highlights for us is that anything is permitted as long as it happens far enough away.
In terms of the Western world's like concept of what's going on.
Maybe. But I'm talking about human zone of interest and how easy it is to be used to whatever's going on. And how easy it is to only focus on what's immediately in front of you. Including phones, right? Because of course everyone's on them, but then everyone has their different habits. So you asked the question, what could reasonably change things? What could actually get people to see or understand or become aware of the situation? And so then I was leading off with imploding space-time, because it's time and space that sets the distance that makes it easy for people to stay in their zone. I call it the zone of interest because of that movie about the Nazis, where they live. It's about the Nazi family that lives right over the wall from Auschwitz, and the family lives here, and the whole movie takes place on the estate of the Nazi family. You never see inside the camp or the ovens. It just happens over there. You kind of know vaguely that the smoke's going by, right? And they're just living in their zone of interest. So that's what I'm playing off of with that term.
Okay.
We have to explore the zone of interest. I'm just not sure about the right way to do it. And I'm not sure that the attention economy or algorithms as they currently exist are going to work, right? So that's the issue.
Yeah.
That's one of the crises of the attention economy.
So we've been out here, right? Since last May, we've been nonstop protesting and experiencing a lot of state repression, experiencing a lot of Zionist hecklers, experiencing a lot of hecklers in general, just being we get what you guys are doing, but there's just a better way to do it. And it's
what?
Like what though?
Yeah.
There's all these people that have things to say about the way you're supposed to resist the state, resist extreme imperialist oppression and silencing and stripping everybody of their rights and criminalizing people who are just existing, right?
Hannah, when you tell us this, are you saying it because you think we don't know about it, or that we'll be shocked by it, or are you just sharing it because you kind of want to get off your chest?
At me. I'm saying it because there's a camera pointed at me.
Oh, okay. I see.
I'm aware that y'all are collecting media, y'all are collecting blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I just want to make it clear that y'all, we are out here on a daily basis, and we encounter hecklers and bullies and cops and fucking security guards and blah 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 on a daily basis who come at us, who talk to us we are out here to support a terrorist organization, it's just in Boise, and in many parts of the U.S., there's an extreme lack of education, and extreme indoctrination, and extreme white Christian nationalism, and people come up to just somebody waving a flag on a corner, and they're like, oh, so you guys support terrorists, right? Blah 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 blah. And it's just it's baffling how insanely like terroristic like the United States is, you know, like here and abroad, all the time, since forever. Like, we all know that, right? Like, we all fucking know that. And people walk up to our like peaceful protests, like, and call us terrorists, call us terrorist sympathizers, call us blah 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 blah. People will probably watch your video, comment on your video, and be like, y'all are terrorist sympathizers. You know, like, it's just
people are robots. It's basically what it is, you know?
Yeah, like, indoctrination is heavy. Like, it's heavy, and
I'd say good luck to
I don't
you,
really
but I don't
know
even
where-
think it's about, you know, but I just want to say I see where you're coming from, and we definitely don't want everyone in Palestine blown off the face of the earth, which does seem to be the last and current administration's goals, and obviously Israel's goal.
Y'all look kind of my age, so like y'all grew up after like 9/11, right? Like, you know, we all grew up with like crazy indoctrination about the Middle East. Like, you know, like we were massacring like people in Iraq. Like, we massacred hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people before 9/11 even happened. You know? And then 9/11 happened, and then it was like, all right, y'all, we're gonna fucking genocide these people. Like, and that was before social media. That was before like we could see a live stream genocide happening. Mm-hmm. And that's probably what fucking happened in Iraq, you know what I mean? Like, and I've got family, I grew up with family members, like, dying overseas. I grew up with family members in the military, like, and I should have been one of those people that was, like, heavily indoctrinated to, like, hate anyone who's brown, you know? Like, that's what our media, that's what our, like, socialization, like, teaches us, is to, like, look at this certain part of the world in a certain way, look at brown people in a certain way, look at anyone with a different religion in a certain way, and neglect the fact that, like, we are a religiously extremist, like, nation. Like, our government is religious extremism. Our government is literally, like, religious extremists. And abhorrently racist, you know? So when this all started going down, you know, like October 2023, like it's not hard to like connect the dots. It's not hard to think about what happened in 2001, what happened with like the war on terror, you know, like this theme that like repeats itself, this like racist indoctrination that we've been fed about brown people, black people. That's our nation. Like, that's what our nation does to subsist. Like, that's why we're out here, you know? And it's like these people in Boise, these people all over the US are so fragile. Like, white fragility is a motherfucking cancer. It's a fucking cancer. And it makes people walk by our little peaceful protests with little flags and memorials and pictures of dead babies and being like, yeah, those babies deserve death. Like, Palestinians deserve death. Like, brown people deserve death. Like, the indoctrination should not be underestimated. Ever.
No.
Like, and it should not be underreported. Ever. Like, it is our responsibility, like, when tyranny becomes law, like, rebellion becomes duty, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
if not now, when? If not us, who? Like, that's all I really have to say. Like, I've seen enough dead kids on my motherfucking phone that being out in the street just makes sense. And do I think it's the solution? No. Do I think it's gonna fix everything? No. But, you know, there's all these fucking people being like, I just don't, you know, I agree with what you're doing, but I think there's a better way to go about it. Okay, then tell me. Nobody has an alternative. Nobody has a fucking alternative. I have voted. I have written my legislators. I have called. I have done everything. I've gone out in the street and then they've slapped me with charges. You know, like, it's just like, I don't think that there's any right way to go about resisting an authoritarian, like, racist fucking regime. Like, if anyone has a solution, please let us know. Please let us know. If you figured it out, let us know. Like,
Yeah.
does anyone have the answer?
Disrupt. If you don't have a solution, just disrupt.
Disrupt. Like,
That's
and
what we're
people
talking about.
want to cry, like, that their lunches, their brunches, their dinners, like, have been ruined, and we're just like innocently trying to, like, eat our oysters. Like, leave us alone, you know? Like, fuck you. No, like, fuck you. Because if it was your kids, what would you want to be happening? Like, if it was your nephew, your niece, your friend's baby, your actual baby, like, what would you want people to be doing? And them, like, literally breaking their backs to characterize people as violent, as, like, un-American, as, like not credible, like, people. Like, literally picture your fucking kids, your sister's kids, your friend's kids. Like, what would you want people to be fucking doing? And I am done being labeled as, like, a bleeding heart, like, liberal, or, like, blah 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 blah. I simply think that it's absurd to be paying tax money to slaughter kids. Like, I don't think that's radical. I don't think anyone should think that that's radical. And anyone who's like, Steve, it, like, you could be doing it in a different way. Like, you could be doing it in a better way. Like, you could make your voice heard in a more productive way. Like, no, fuck you. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, how do you see, like, proper resistance happening? Like, please give me an answer, because nobody has one. They're just mad that they can't, like, have their brunch in peace.
Yep.
So,
I think you're right about Boiseans, especially
Boiseans,
with their brunches.
especially. My friend is over there because she's trespassed. She can't come over here.
Where's your trespass?
Because she was protesting the genocide in Gaza.
No, but where does she trespass?
She's trespassed on the Capitol.
Just for being on this?
Yep, she cannot come here. She has to stay over there.
Then why are you able to be over here?
I'm not trespassed.
What made it so that she was trespassing?
Nothing.
The same thing you're doing?
Yep.
They just didn't get you on that yet?
They just didn't get me. Well, they got
you on something else.
I got 4 criminal charges.
Or like misdemeanors or some shit?
I got misdemeanors. I got 2 felonies that got dismissed because they're bullshit. Like, state repression is real. State repression is really real.
Yeah.
They're abducting and deporting protesters, college students.
Yeah.
They're revoking people's visas just because they are speaking out against U.S.-funded genocide. They're literally fucking abducting them and sending them to motherfucking Louisiana, El Salvador, fucking Guantanamo. Like,
Louisiana?
yes. You know Mahmoud?
I know Guantanamo.
He got sent to the detention center in Louisiana
Oh. Okay.
from New York.
What do you think, Nance?
About what?
I don't know.
Got a lot of thoughts, man.
It's gross, y'all, and I appreciate journalists.
Well, we'll definitely bring the rest of this chapter back into dialogue with your, I want to call it a statement, but it's also like your experience here. So, thank you.
These folks are out here every Friday and Saturday. Previously, they were out here every single day, 24/7, until the cops raided and arrested and charged people enough to have it fizzle out. So, state repression is crazy in Boise.
U.S. is not very tolerant
No.
or liberal
No.
as soon as it gets to slavery and genocide. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Do we have the thing?
Got the thing.
You got it. Let's go.
The revolutionary loop. So, the no longer new left trapped itself in a seamless loop. Growing militancy, growing isolation, growing commitment to the revolution. Sloppier and more frantic attempts to imagine a revolutionary
Love
class.
you guys. Good luck with your production.
Take care.
Thank you for
Be careful out
hearing
there.
me out and my rambling.
Be careful.
I appreciate y'all.
Don't let those Nazi boys get you. I mean that.
Students for a Democratic Society, the movement's main organizational web, became its final battlefield. As the organization was pulled apart by cannibal factions, most of the remnants of the old New Left stood aside, demoralized, gazing in fascinated horror as sideshow theatrics became the movement's main act. How could the organization that began by echoing Albert Camus and C. Wright Mills end with one faction chanting, "Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh, dare to struggle, dare to win," while members of the other waved their little red books in the air and chanted, "Mao, Mao, Mao Zedong"? The comic book crudeness of the sloganeering at this point was self-evident to anyone with a residual hold on reality, anyone who appreciated how many enemies the movement's strategy of fighting back was arousing, how many sleeping dogs were barking precisely because the movement had aroused them. The old guard stood dumbstruck, as if at the scene of a bloody accident. The perpetrators were not aliens. They were familiar, indeed horrifying and enthralling, precisely because they were familiar. Several of the leading weathermen had been visible in and around SDS for a number of years. The weathermen were the New Left's id, said Tom Hayden. They were my children, said Carl Oglesby. He had taught them, inspired them, loved them. And what they caricatured was equally familiar: the politics of the late New Left. All the versions of that politics attempted to force a revolutionary solution to a fundamental problem.
Is it good, man? Will? The mic thing? It's not cutting in or out or anything?
No, it's fine.
Oh, okay.
I just need to kind of nurse it a little bit, so I'll just stay on this
I
side.
thought it died or something.
No.
Okay.
If morality and eschatology agreed that there had to be a revolution, there had to be someone to make it. The New Left's torment, the torment of all radical student movements, was that relatively privileged people were fighting on behalf of the oppressed. Blacks, Vietnamese, the working class. Committed to a revolution it did not have the power to bring about, the movement cast about for a link with forces that might have the power, but none did. For all the slackening and the loyalties. Can I have a cigarette too? Yeah. Gracias, amigo. Shit. Not good. Committed to a revolution it did not have the power to bring about, the movement cast about for a link with forces that might have the power, but none did. For all the slackening and the loyalties which bound people to the social order, for all the demonstrations and dropping out and divisions among the governing forces, there was no revolutionary crisis. Yet, to give up the revolutionary dream would have been to confront a situation without precedent in the history of the modern left. The working class was conservative, more or less. The privileged were radical. What could be made of that? Unwilling to give up the revolutionary dream, the new left factions convinced themselves that the revolution had already begun and proceeded to conjure up abstract and imaginary allies. Allies either non-existent, revolutionary white youth, industrial workers, or unreliable, Black Panthers, or remote, Vietnamese and Chinese. The more abstract these hypothetical allies, the more serviceable for the revolutionary myth. The Weathermen, in other words, were an extension, not the only imaginable one, but the most rageful, of bad abstract politics by other means. They were the purest consequence of a syllogism. The revolution had to be. There was no one to make it, therefore it had to be forced. They finessed the flaws in their vision and resolved to bowl past obstacles with sheer nerve. They were the pure new left, in a way. Self-enclosed, contemptuous liberalism, romantic about third world revolutions, organized in small squads, exuberant with will, courageous, reckless, arrogant, burning to act as if anything might be possible. And ideologically, they shared the growing movement notion that the bulk of Americans were bribed by affluence into supporting the system. 3 SDS theorists wrote an influential pamphlet in 1968 arguing that consumption amounted to wasteful domestic imperialism. Still, only one of the 3, David Gilbert, came to conclude that the American working class was hopelessly integrated into capitalism's strategy for stabilization and that terror was therefore legitimate. Most of the movement still observed limits, moralities, barriers between politics and violence. To convert weak ideas into desperado politics, it was necessary to let rage off the leash. The details of SDS's late days matter less than the logic, but traces of the history that begats of successive fashions display the logic unfolding. The Weathermen faction coalesced as SDS girded for its June 1969 convention. The faction, organized by progressive labor, was growing less a consequence of its Maoism, whatever exactly that was. It was certainly different from the barricade romanticism of the French Maoists, than of its availability as a counterforce to the resistance mood of the 1960s, of 67 through 69. With its talk of base building and worker-student alliance, its short hair and suspicion of rock and roll, to avoid offending the workers, PL positioned itself as a straight-laced alternative to the raucous go-it-alone sentiment surging through the rest of SDS. Few of the delegates to PL's founding convention came from the industrial working class, but inexperience boosted the fantasy. It equipped PL's sympathizers to think that by taking a summer job in a factory, they could bring correct politics to the historically predestined agency of change. Not surprisingly, PL's major strength within National SDS came from that citadel of privileged guilt, Harvard. If you intuited that insurgent students, even numbering in the millions and even featured on the nightly news, were no substitute for a wider political base, PL looked plausible. With its disciplined cadres and prepackaged quotations from Mao, PL was at least a way of making a pass at clarity.
Slogans, baby. PL helped Marxize SDS, and PL fattened parasitically as Marxism and then Marxism-Leninism became SDS's unofficial language. Quote, in about a 6 months period, as Greg Calvert later put it, suddenly everybody in SDS said, I am a Marxist, or I am a Marxist-Leninist. People you never would have suspected of having read Marx at all suddenly became Marxists overnight. Behind that mass conversion was a hunger. Marxism as a practice traditionally was, among other things, the historically certified attempt to solve a perennial problem, to reconcile the privilege of socialist intellectuals with their commitment to take the side of the oppressed. If Marxism had no good solution, if indeed the failure of the pre-World War I's social democratic parties is what brought Lenin to the fore and made the rest of the history of socialism revolve around the baleful precedent of his success, at least Marxism acknowledged the problem. Lenin went further and made the bearers of theory indispensable. And so in the late 60s, the student movement cast about for a usable Marxism. One possible option was to declare the movement itself the crucible of a revolutionary class. After PL, Marxism entered SDS as a way to make respectable the idea of the movement for itself. This was the tack of a 1966 pamphlet by the Prairie Power leader Carl Davidson, a student syndicalist movement, arguing that students were being trained as future managers, technocrats and technicians, that the universities were factories whose product was knowledgeable labor, and that when students tried to take power in those factories, they were igniting a sort of anticipatory strike at the core of society. There's a footnote I won't read. Then came from what jocularly known as the Port Authority Statement. Early in 1967, a small New York faction imported French Marxism and argued in a long polemic that professionals and technical workers were themselves a new working class, the cutting edge of this stage of capitalist development, the true creators of wealth who, with help, would come to see that to be free and happy, they needed to overthrow superfluous capital. Students were labor in embryo. The important thing was to sustain the principle put forward in February 1967 by SDS National Secretary and Davidson's ally, Greg Calvert. Quote, the liberal reformist is always engaged in fighting someone else's battles, Calvert said. Liberal consciousness is conscience translated into action for others. That's also a quote by Calvert. On the contrary, radical or revolutionary consciousness is the perception of oneself as unfree, as oppressed, and leads to the struggle for one's own freedom in unity with others who share the burden of oppression. Also a quote by this guy Calvert. But none of these attempts to place students at the storm center of radical social change proved persuasive. For one thing, if the new working class was the core of the production system of the future, why were student radicals coming from the ranks of sociologists and English majors, not engineers? And if students were training to be managers or well-paid professionals, in what sense were they suffering? Were boredom and powerlessness comparable to the wounds of the Vietnamese or the starvation of Guatemalan peasants? What if the logic of their individualist revolt led no further than sex, drugs, rock and roll, and dodging the draft? Precisely because there were so many students in motion, it was self-evident that students did not suffice, that other forces were needed to make the revolution. The problem remained not just what was to be done, but who was to do it. By 1969, then, all the factions of SDS strutted about as self-appointed vanguards in search of battalions. PL's working class, the Weathermen's Third World, the Revolutionary Youth Movement's working class class youth. They spoke in Marxist-Leninist tongues because there was, as Carl Oglesby wrote, no other coherent, integrative, and explicit philosophy of revolution. What's the way? What's the alternative? But more, Leninism was a kind of solution, as spurious as it was ingenious, to the core problem. So big, the student movement was too small to remake America root and branch. It had to cast about for a group big and strategically placed enough to do that, which raised another problem. The revolutionaries had to remain indispensable. After all, they were either born into privilege or schooled to believe they were entitled to it. Knowledge was their key to mastery. Eureka! Leninism! The classic way to enable would-be vanguards to finesse the contradiction between their aspirations and their capacities. Title holders of irreplaceable theory, keepers of perpetual flames at the tombs of revolutionary ancestors, the Leninist groupings could fancy themselves the vanguard of a revolutionary class, could justify holding power in the course of the revolution. And why stop there? For Leninism gave would-be theorists the most honored of places. With perverse brilliance, it preserved the anarchist taste for the small group and welded it to a time-honored strategy for successful revolution. The vanguard was the gang transmuted into the party. This next section is called The Logic of Sectarianism, and I want to read at least the first paragraph of it.
Yep.
Because we're all, I think, shivering at this point. It's pretty cold out here.
It's a bit chilly.
Enter the Weathermen. The 16,000-word position paper from which they took their name, called You Don't Need a Weatherman to Know Which Way the Wind Blows, after a little-known Bob Dylan line, argued that you did need one after all, and they were it. It swooped from giddy third worldism to a call for anti-pig self-defense movements and cadre organization on the way to a Marxist-Leninist party and armed struggle. From Chinese Defense Minister Lin Pao's famous 1965 polemic came the notion that just as the Chinese revolutionaries had first mobilized the peasantry and surrounded the cities, now the Third World Revolution was going to surround the imperialist metropolis. It was just a matter of time before the United States, the imperialist mother country itself, was engulfed in revolution. The Weathermen closed with Lin Pao's title, Long Live Victory of People's War. Should we finish or do more at the warehouse?
Yeah, let's head.
Yeah.
Let's head in.
Yeah. To warmth.
Individual consumerists must think. Dead babies. Dead babies. Give a shit if you fucking see dead babies, bitch. I'm fucking seeing shit like that.
No, that's the
I don't
part
give a
where
fuck
I
if
was
you
like,
see that shit.
that's when she was like, I was just gonna, I mean, I was like, wow, was Nance gonna fucking like go off and be like,
Not worth it.
I was there, bitch, I fucking know.
Not worth it. It's very frustrating.
But no, that's why I asked her, are you trying to tell us this?
Yeah. It's very frustrating.
Because she didn't want to tell us this, she wanted to tell the camera.
Right, and I realized that, and I was like, okay, I'll just sit and let her. But it's just self-defeating, dude. It's like, come on, dude. It's very sad. It's very, very sad.
I definitely didn't want to argue with her, but I was also like, well,
It seemed like she wanted to argue with us.
because she wanted to try to like group us in. She's like, oh, we're all aligned, and you all care, and so then we're all on this. And I was like, no, we're not.
No, hold on.
We're not.
No, hold on. It just sucks, dude. Like that. She's consumer brain. She wants to tell us all about her experience.
What she's been consuming.
Yeah, and I don't. Sorry, bitch. I don't give a shit.
She's like, I've been consuming on my phone.
Yeah.
And it's a nightmare. And it's like, yeah.
Well,
That's why I wanted to be like, is it a surprise? Are you surprised about it? Was this all like news to you?
the one thing that could have, but I doubt it would have, but could have turned into a deep conversation was when we got on the subject of disruption. And she's like talking about, well, that's the point, isn't it? Like, I was like, oh, well, yeah, pulling people out of, you know, the kind of mindless daily life bullshit that they're in. Don't you think people publicly reading books would pull someone out of like their normal day-to-day routine?
Here, I'm gonna put this in the garbage.
In a less oppositional way than yelling at people and telling them that you're tired of looking at dead babies on fucking Instagram?
Yeah. I think at least you got off the couch.
Yeah.
But that's the dialectic. That's the dialectic, or we could say positive cybernetic feedback loop. Maybe it's negative. I can't tell which, if it's positive or negative, but it's the feedback loop of an extreme minority of pseudo activity that has a pacifying counter effect on the overwhelming majority, while making you feel virtuous.
Yep.
And that makes the passive people feel virtuous too, because then they feel like they're not wasting their time doing that, at least.
Yeah.
Unless you're one of these, you know, Boise progressives who sees her as a revolutionary subject, who's like, change will come from those people feeling that way, saying those things. So they honk and they go, yeah, and they do the peace sign. Which, by the way, in the time that we did that, we saw a lot of support and no hate.
No hate. It's just frustrating. Indicative of the problems, and it's fucking hilarious that I think what we're doing is actually radical, and the so-called radicals won't let us do what we're trying to do. That's frustrating. And I can't stand people who only want to talk about themselves. Sorry, bitch. Sorry that happened to you.
Yeah.
Stop looking at it.
Yeah, I stopped looking a while ago. Not saying that's good. I'm not saying it's better, but it's also like, you know, I realized it wasn't going to do anything.
Well, I don't know. I feel like we're trying to do
keep
something.
watching it.
I feel like we're trying to do something about it.
Yeah.
And the people who think they're trying to do something about it won't let us do what we're trying to do. What a catch-22. Nothing can be done. Give up. We lost the war. The future will not be televised.
You are behind enemy lines and your side lost a long time ago. Should be just a fucking hat I wear or a t-shirt just so I can get out ahead of these conversations. And I could say we, but no, you, because I don't know about the we.
Right.
It could say I, but I also want to, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Do drugs and hold signs. You know what's funny?
Dude, yeah, the way she...
She was on something.
Space the fuck out. Yeah.
There's a type of guy. We're gonna just call him Lumpin'. Who can't hold a job because he just does drugs all the time. So he gets a job as a sign holder for 5 guys. and he stands on the street, and he gets high, and he flips the sign around, and he's living his best life. And then there's a type of young radical who can't hold a job because they do drugs all the time.
So
And they get a job holding a protest sign or a flag, and they just do drugs and hold their flag all day long.
Yeah.
One thinks they're radical, one knows they're going nowhere.
And both know they're hated. But they both get some support from honkers by
There we go.
who give them the peace sign and
There we
honk.
go. I'm gonna go put this in my car. Want to put something in the car?
We're gonna post up. You sure want to do it? I mean, I don't need to. Yeah, if you want to pee.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just be inside. That's cool. Welcome to the warehouse. Let's go find a nice place to post up. Great barbecue right here. I don't know this place very well. And is this thing going? Is it hot?
Nothing's going. It's a bit hot. Just speak for me, Dave.
I'm talking about how I can't wait to eat some food. It's working? All right. The logic of sectarianism. Enter the Weathermen. And then skipping to the bottom of that opening paragraph I already read, the Weathermen closed with Lin Powell's title, Long Live the Victory of People's War.
People's War.
Who knows how many of SDS's 100,000 or more members actually read this clotted and interminable manifesto, which raised obscurity and thick-headedness to new heights. But the Weathermen didn't recruit through force of argument so much as through style. Their esprit was undeniable. They were good-looking. They had, how do you say that word?
Panache?
Panache. They radiated confidence as if to the manner born. Nor did it spoil their mystique that, like some of the PL leaders, several of the Weathermen came from wealth. Bill Ayers, the son of the chairman of the board of the Commonwealth Illinois Electrical Combine. David Gilbert, the son of a toy manufacturer. Diana Auten, the daughter of a small-town Illinois banker and Republican state legislator, and great-granddaughter of the founder of the Boy Scouts of America. Most of the old guard, by contrast, were children of public school teachers, professors, accountants, and the like. A higher proportion of the Prairie Power group came from working-class families. But contrary to popular impression, most of the Weathermen were not the spoiled children of the rich. What drove them was not so much class origins, but magical fury. Theory permitted them to abase themselves before a stereotyped third world, and yet hold on to their special mission. Turns out you can do that without theory. They presented themselves as the refutation of PL, which was tactically stolid, morally stodgy, no drugs, no living in sin, and shockingly unenamored of the Black Panthers and Ho Chi Minh. In accord with the prevailing sociology of the 50s and 60s, they thought the bulk of the American working class, all but the young angries, had been bought off. They scorned the notion that there is a magic moment after we reach a certain percentage of the working class when all of a sudden we become a working class movement. We are already that if we put forward internationalist proletarian politics. Presto! Who needed the working class? At the core of the Weathermen mystique stood SDS's interorganizational secretary, Bernadine Dorn, who combined lawyerly articulatedness with a sexual charisma, even more than her chorus line looks that left men dazzled. As SDS's 1968 convention, Dorn picked up a national following when she declared she was a revolutionary communist with a small c. She fused the two premium female images of the moment, sex queen and street fighter. Indeed, Of all the factions, the Weathermen were the most alluring to women, who could prove themselves now by slinging revolutionary jargon and kicking ass with the best of the men. Once installed in the STS's office, she agreed to put aside feminism for the revolution. Compared to Bernadette Dorn, the famous Mark Rudd was a minor Weatherman adornment, if a major one, by media lights. Maybe they didn't want to. The media lights didn't want to give Bernadine the attention because she was too hot.
Yeah.
Maybe. These hip outlaws made revolution look like fun. One of the signers of their manifesto, Gerald Long, had raved about Bonnie and Clyde for The Guardian, likening the consciousness-expanding outlaws to Frantz Fanon and the NLF hero Nyon Van Troy. The Weathermen relished LSD. They liked orgies. Although their formal position papers were as leaden as all the other factions', they were not allergic to wit, on which they placed heavy hands. They were given to headlines like Hot Town, Summer in the City, or I Ain't Gonna Work on Maggie's Farm No More. In New Left Notes, soon renamed Fire, they ran pictures and articles celebrating the presumed guerrilla exploits of a 5-year-old child named Marian Delgado, who had once derailed a train. Their top command was what else? The Weather Bureau. Proud of their roots in youthful innocence, they sang songs like I'm Dreaming of a White Riot to the tune of White Christmas. And from West Side Story, when you're a red all the way, from your first party cell to your class takes a state. And to the tune of Maria, the most beautiful sound I ever heard, Kim Il-sung. I've just met a Marxist-Leninist named Kim Il-sung, and suddenly his line seems so correct and fine to me, Kim Il-sung. Say it soft and there's rice fields flowing. Say it loud and there's people's war growing. Kim Il-sung, I'll never stop saying Kim Il-sung. Kill was a slip, I guess. Giggling at their own fanaticism, they also affected themselves superior to it. During the People's Park battle, for example, a visiting Weatherman delegation criticized the Berkeley Well Poster group I belonged to because we had failed to conclude our editorial with a resounding power to the people. A few days later, I heard two of them at a party, stoned, going on about Chairman Mao having said this, Chairman Mao having said that. Where did the Red Book come from? I finally exploded. Heaven? They exchanged a look of stoned knowingness and rolled their eyes. The blonde Jeff Jones, formerly of Antioch College, cherubic as a Southern California surfer he had once been, smiled at me and hissed, "Yes!" Then the two of them cracked up at the straight man rube.
Because Mao's Republic was heaven on earth. That was like government policy.
That's
That
policy.
they achieved heaven on earth. So yes, it did come from heaven.
They knew they were crazy, said Carl Oglesby, who knew them better than anyone else of the old SDS years later. Terry Robbins and Billy Ayers had this Butch Cassidy and Sundance attitude. They were blessed. They were hexed. They would die young. They would live forever. And at their most triumphant moment, they would look over their shoulders as Butch and Sundance looked back at their implacable pursuers and say, more in administration than in dread, who are those guys? Oh, more in admiration than in dread. Who are those guys? I believe they thought they looked cute and that everybody would know it was basically a joke. The next minute, they were lost in it and couldn't get out. That's a quote by this guy, yeah. Although the Weathermen loathed the old New Left, they lashed out at so-called movement people as this kind of right-wing force, this weirdness that's moving around, infected by pacifism and morality. They still cried out to be taken as sole heirs of the original SDS. They had credentials, mostly from the SDS of 1966 and after. SDS campus travelers like Washington's Kathy Wilkerson, ex-Swarthmore, and the Midwest's Terry Robbins, ex-ERAP. The one-time Columbia chapter influentials John Jacobs, Ted Gold, and David Gilbert, as well as the media shooting star Mark Rudd. The longtime civil rights and ERAP organizer turned August 1968 Chicago Hilton stink bomber, Kathy Boudin, The Ann Arbor Children's Committee school organizer, Bill Ayers, children are only newer people, as a slogan, I think, from Bill Ayers, read their happy face button. Children are only newer people. Many of them had been swept away at staggering speed. A mere 2 years earlier, Gilbert had been one of the authors of the Port Authority Statement. Boudin, an organizer of welfare mothers in Cleveland. Ayers, a campaigner of an anti-war resolution in the American Federation of Teachers. On the movement's breakneck timetable, they could claim to have tried everything short of revolutionary violence. SES's 1969 convention, its last, met in the cavernous Chicago Coliseum amid a veritable counter-convention of reporters excluded, FBI agents equipped with long lenses on the third floor of a vacant building across the street, and hundreds of police milling around, in and out of uniform, snapping pictures. Of the 1,500 delegates, perhaps a third were controlled by PL. Perhaps another third were divided between the Weathermen and their short-term allies, the upholders of a rival version of a revolutionary youth movement. We're talking about the SES's final convention in 1969 in the Chicago Coliseum. Wow, I wonder if Catrone was there. No, he was probably a kid. He was a kid. Yeah. No, maybe Reed. Of the 1,500 delegates, perhaps a third, maybe Pistone.
Yep.
Of the 1,500 delegates, perhaps a third were controlled by PL. Perhaps another third were divided between the Weathermen and their short-term allies, the upholders of a rival version of a revolutionary youth movement, RYM2 for short, in the arcane jargon of the time. Among the RYM2 supporters was a Bay Area faction passing out a pamphlet called The Red Papers, adorned with portraits of Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Stalin.
The remaining third were baffled newcomers, dazed rank-and-filers, and other tendencies casting anathema on all the leading factions. Most inventively, a grouplet of anarchists passing out Murray Bookchin's corrosive pamphlet, Listen, Marxist, with its cover pictures of Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Bugs Bunny. The rest of the organization, tens of thousands of national members, and who knew how many members of individual chapters, voted with their feet and stayed away. So did almost all the old and middle period hands of SDS. Reports filtered back from Chicago as if from another planet, or rather, from a moon in orbit around one's own. For that bone-white light, that silver deathliness, had the familiar look of reflected light. The funeral had its farcical aspects. To score points against PL, the Weathermen, RYM2 coalition, trundled out Third World allies, representatives of the Young Lords, Brown Berets, and finally, of course, the Black Panthers, whose Illinois Minister of Information, in the course of a diatribe against the armchair Marxists of PL, suddenly launched into a celebration of pussy power.
Oh, God.
Proclaiming that Superman was a punk because he never even tried to fuck Lois Lane. The anarchists' Bugs Bunny cartoon turned out more realistic than they could have imagined. Another Panther took the stage to endorse pussy power, and to add, a la Stokely Carmichael, that the correct position for women in the movement was prone.
Oh.
The crowd, aghast, hooted.
Oh, jeez.
That's horrible. The next day, the Panthers returned and read an ultimatum. PL had to change its line, or they will be considered as counter-revolutionary traitors and will be dealt with as such. It sounded like a burlesque of the left-wing mumbo-jumbo of earlier decades, but no one laughed. PL chanted, "Smash red baiting, smash red baiting. Read Mao, read Mao." But these were only curtain-raising preliminaries to the grand climax. The Weathermen and RYM2 caucus then decided to expel PL and its allies for being objectively anti-communist and counter-revolutionary. "Long live the victory of People's War," were Bernardine Dorn's parting words before leading 700 fist-waving delegates out of the convention hall, chanting, "Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh," into their own rump SDS. The Weathermen had no qualms about dismantling the largest organization of the New Left. Indeed, the largest American organization anywhere on the left in 50 years. The rest of an agonized, bewildered movement could be sloughed off like old skin. They reveled in the thrill of cutting loose, true outlaws at last. Hilarious, this debacle, but no one could laugh it off. There was too much at stake, and tragedy that repeats itself too often becomes numbingly banal.
We're about to be there. This is in Chicago.
In the course of the previous year, name-calling had become SDS's premium style. Whole issues of New Left Notes were filled with columns of factional denunciation, written in clumsy Marxoid code, brother fucking I called it, and wrote to a Cuban friend that these fights among brothers depresses me enormously. The left is its own worst enemy here, and often I'm glad we're in no position to take power. If we did, the only honorable sequel would be abdication. One small but exemplary moment, the arraignment of almost 500 demonstrators, including my civil libertarian self, who had gone to a January 1969 rally banned by Fiat at San Francisco State College. I had been skittering around the edges of the campus strike for months, writing articles, working on a campus wall poster, comforting the wounded, outside agitating in an effort to organize an alternative to the PL caucus in the SDS chapter, and then, during the bust, watching a cop blithely steal my address book for my pains. Now, in court, I heard the clerk call my name. As I walked to the front of the courtroom, one of the PL people hissed, "Revisionist!" A small thing, but demoralizing. All the veterans had stories like that. On every quarter of the white left, high and low, as Carl Oglesby wrote, the attempt to reduce the new left's inchoate vision to the old left's perfected remembrance has produced a layer of bewilderment and demoralization which no cop with his club or senator with his committee could ever have induced. Still more demoralizing, it dawned upon Oglesby and me, and others of our ilk, that the sectarian furies were more than an epidemic of nasty manners. The intellectual squalor and moral collapse of the SDS leadership followed, in fact, from their common and long-growing commitment to the revolution from on high, which was the only place it could have come from in this decidedly unrevolutionary circumstance. True sectarians are in the habit of disputing one another's positions in earnest, endlessly, humorlessly, as if the concepts deserve to be taken at face value. Too little attention has been paid to sectarianism as a phenomenon in its own right, a force capable of fueling wild energies on behalf of positions that seem, to all but partisans, incomprehensible. That was a huge run-on sentence. I was going to stop and say hi, but it just kept going. Hello.
Hello.
Political sectarianism is the fight for possession of a sacred thing. In other words, the revolution. The more appealing the fantasy, the more vicious the sectarian ravages. For the force of sectarianism is one result of an inflated belief in the power of revolutionaries. The silent reasoning goes like this. 1. The need or the situation is revolutionary. But 2. Behold, the revolution is not upon us. Therefore, 3. It follows that the masses, workers, students, are being misled by bad revolutionaries who must be as powerful as we would like to be, as we would be if not for them. In 1969, the revolutionaries' only property was the idea of the revolution embodied in the organization. Thus, the overriding importance of taking over SDS. Thus, the ferocity of the factional struggle. Tom Nairn put it well in an analysis of the May '68 movement in France. Where ideas are all, the upholder of a contrary thesis becomes automatically an enemy. Indeed, the most vicious of enemies, since his position is the most direct contestation of the vital truths. Where the revolution is reduced to this poverty, every scrap matters. Every opinion, every attitude, every individual adhesion to this or that idea must be fought over like a bone. Antagonism becomes hatred, and polemic is turned into degenerate abuse. When history is not performing the way the script decrees, then the sectarian conceives a bottomless faith in organization, in the ability of the group to accomplish by sheer drive and hard energy all that history is failing to do. The fierce, arid tension of this subjectivity is then interpreted as the revolutionary spirit, the right-fighting atmosphere. This, and all the other traits of sectarian Marxism indicated, its arrogance. its violent elitism, its instant and cutting condemnation of all deviations from the line, its chronic substitution of insult for argument, its mystique of exclusive worker militancy, the cult of organization, reflect the basic previous defensiveness of such movements. That is, its underlying historical task of keeping alive the consciousness of revolution across the hell-black night of the last decades. Language became a cudgel in this shadow play, which is why PL and the Weatherman's pronouncements, mind-numbingly derivative and frequently self-contradictory, far from damaging their claims to revolutionary virtue, actually certified them. Each side agreed there was a primary contradiction in the world. They disagreed only about what it was. Simple-minded on the surface, obscurantist on further inspection, these pronunciamientos read like encrusted imitations of Stalinist polemics from bygone decades, or bad translations from the Chinese. That they were bad writing was essential to their purpose. Their laden abstraction served to distract from intractable realities, above all, the widespread public distaste for revolutionary violence. Merck enabled the sectarians to mask, even from themselves, what they intended to do. As George Orwell noted, it is easier to speak of killing someone if you muffle the intention in a batting of polysyllabic abstractions. The clumsily translated quality of weather prose also certified that the writers belonged to the club of successful revolutionaries. I open the Weatherman document at random and find this sentence. As a whole, the long-range interests of the non-colonial sections of the working class lie with overthrowing imperialism, with supporting self-determination for the oppressed nations, including the black colony, with supporting and fighting for international socialism. We read that. Yeah. The prefabricated phrases spare the trouble of genuine thought, but more, they are easily parroted by those who want to feel privy to important questions. They are like a tourist's handbook phrases, instantly conveying a false sense of membership in an alien culture. In this case, the culture of world revolution. Thus, too, the Weatherman's post-schism document embraced the People's Republics of North Korea and Albania. Ignorance wasn't an excuse, it was a requirement. Impenetrable outside the charmed circle of believers, the phrases amount to ritual incantation for the cadres. They ratify the division between vanguard and ignorant mass. The vanguard, by definition, are the people who can read or abide the priestly phrases. The Weathermen quickly learned to spice their proclamations with snappier exhortations to kick ass and kill the pig, but they never shed the belief that political power in the revolution grows out of a barrel of grandiose slogans.
We're gonna go eat and not do this now, but because they close in 40 minutes in here and we all want a food. But the next section is kicking ass, and then when prophecy fails, and then we have to create chaos, and then we've got to turn New York into Saigon, and then death culture. And I can't wait to read that with you guys. So yeah, Ann and I read a section from, I don't know, like probably like
somewhere
a little bit
about
earlier.
The Bay Area, and we wanted to do it from the People's Park. The People's Park was so gross and unsafe.
Yeah.
We just ended up in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco.
That's funny.
Look, Ann's with us now.
Whoa, we got in!
She caught up with us. She found us. She stayed an extra day in Reno. All right, so
Chocolate cake.
you made some
Made some chocolate cake. Delicious.
chocolate cake. Is delicious. I told Ann about the getting accosted
By Hannah.
Hannah and on the phone, and yeah, so she knows.
I would have just called her racist to her face.
Oh, for doing the white. You're my white males.
Yes.
I told her I don't like associating with people who primarily think in terms of race or gender.
Nice.
And then she just said, "Oh yeah, Boise's terrible." And it launches into like white nationalists are her problem, and I was just like,
You're the problem.
it's like you All right, whatever. All right. We're gonna go get some food.
Food!
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Theory Underground exists to cultivate the conditions necessary for a working-class intellectual renaissance that goes beyond old political categories or other identitarian niches. At TU, autodidact workers with earbuds and professionals who see no future in existing institutions or movements are able to challenge their doxa and develop an understanding of the situation we are in.
If you subscribe at theoryunderground.com, you'll get access to a package of courses, including my Intro to Fault Line Theory, which includes Intro to Nick Land and Intro to Slavoj Žižek. These courses are being woven with the 3 courses that take place on a month-to-month basis, spread out throughout the year of 2025. Those courses are 12 Core Concepts and the Fundamental Problems with the Situation Today with social theorist David McKerracher, 12 Essential Political Thinkers with political theorist Benjamin Studebaker, and The Philosophy of Nature with philosopher Nina Power.
The way these all get woven together at a deeper and more meta level is through the ongoing research seminars led by David McKerracher, Benjamin Studebaker, and Michael Downs, where they engage with one another's work by sharing developments from their own perspectives, theory, and research.
If you subscribe at higher levels and support our work, we'll support your development with bespoke teaching. Alone and unaided, we struggle to grasp our situation in its fullness and formulate a meaningful response. By working together and pooling our energies, we can do better. Join us at theoryunderground.com/subscribe.
There'll be 2 kinds of people in 10 years. Those who said, I knew all along Theory Underground was going to make this huge difference. Those are the people that are like Nance, who were on the sidelines at one point and then said, nah, I'm going to get in. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to go hard. And then there's another kind of person, a person who waits in the wings, collects receipts, and who will say in 10 years, oh yeah, I was there. I saw that happen. And then they'll gossip monger. Listen, if you want to get involved, get involved. But if you're going to sit there in the bleachers, well, here's some popcorn. I hope you have fun.